Alright, we finally made it through the preseason. Now their games are going to actually count, and now we can fully judge them from a full 48-minute game standpoint, even though some fans have already been doing that and freaking out about preseason losses. But regardless, I think we did learn something about their team. Not only one thing, but actually a few things about their team, especially while they play without LeBron James going forward, which they likely will do until mid-November at the earliest. And with that in mind here, I think we learned something about their rotation. In fact, we may have learned their actual 10-man rotation they plan to run. Not only that, but they officially confirmed their opening day starting lineup, which does in fact include Gabe Vincent. Now whether or not it remains that way is up for debate, but that will be their opening day starting lineup. So we learned that about their team, more about their rotation, more about the way they plan to play, more about their defense and the different schemes they plan to use on both defense and offense. So we're going to talk about that and go through all of that during today's video, covering the most important parts I think we learned about their team throughout the entirety of preseason and training camp. So without further ado, I guess starting with the one I kind of hinted at here, that being their starting lineup. Yes, they did officially unveil it. Redick officially confirming last night that their starting lineup from last night will be the same one they opened with on opening day against Golden State. And well, that does happen to be the 5-man combination of Austin Reeves, Gabe Vincent, Luka Doncic, Rui Hachimura, and DeAndre Ayton. Yes, again, a temporary starting lineup, not going to be the same when LeBron comes back, and who knows, even before that it might be changed again. Many have thought that Jared Vanderbilt might get that 5th spot, others thought maybe Marcus Smart or possibly Jake LaRavia, but it did eventually turn out to be Gabe Vincent. And well, if you watch preseason, then you really shouldn't be that shocked about it. After all, Vincent averaged over 15 points per game throughout preseason, in only about 23 minutes played per game. On top of that, he was their best 3-point shooter throughout preseason. Not even close, he was without a doubt the best in their team throughout preseason, not to mention having an 18-point first quarter against Dallas earlier this week. On top of that, has been a great leader for their team, spoken about from JJ Redick, Luka Doncic, other players in their team. He obviously is highly respected and highly valued within their rotation, and now has become the 5th temporary starter on their team. And while I'm definitely not entirely against it, I think he's probably one of the few two-way players on their team, a guy that can be a positive both offensively and defensively at the same time. I think my only kind of hesitation with it is that he's one of their smaller defenders. Yes, he's a pretty solid point of attack and a good screen navigator, but obviously isn't a wing defender, can't match up 1 through 3, let alone even 1 through 2 at times, is mainly a point guard defender, mainly a guy to pick up the ball handler and cause havoc at the 3-point line. But apart from that, he's not going to be a very switchable defender, isn't a guy that you want switching 1 through 5, isn't a guy that you want trying to defend wing players and take on the toughest matchup on the court regardless of where they play at. That's not the role that Gabe Vincent will or can fill on the court. That's kind of my only hesitation with it. Apart from that, I'm not really against it offensively. You know, maybe isn't the most reliable 3-point shooter, but again obviously was very good throughout preseason. If he can maintain even a semblance of that, then he should be a pretty good fit. Obviously can play both on the ball and off the ball offensively. That's a good fit with Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves, so in that regard I'm definitely not against it. But with the defensive concerns and with both Marcus Smart and Vanderbilt being a bit more versatile and all around more effective defensively, I think they might eventually have to go to that, at least in some matchups. But regardless, I'm not entirely against it, and I think he definitely did earn more playing time from his performance throughout preseason. Though again, I think we learned more about their entire rotation, not only the starting lineup, which really is not that important at the end of the day. The more important part here is who gets the most playing time and who will actually finish the game for their team, which may or may not be Gabe Vincent. Apart from that, Redick hinted heavily at their 9 or 10-man rotation that he does plan to utilize on opening day, which will obviously include the 5 starters, then in addition to them, having Marcus Smart, Jake LaRavia, Jared Vanderbilt, and Jackson Hayes confirmed to be in the rotation coming off the bench. That being their 9-man rotation if they run that. Then for a 10-man rotation, the likely 10th man will probably be Maxi Kleber. If anything, Redick kind of showed that last night, Kleber eventually being the 10th man off the bench for their team, or I guess kind of 5th man off the bench for their team, coming in after halftime and playing a majority of the 3rd quarter and 4th quarter minutes. Now I'm not sure if that confirms or not that he will be in the rotation. After all, Jackson Hayes did get hurt and did not play during the second half last night, so if he did play, would have Maxi Kleber actually played apart from garbage time? Not entirely sure about that. Yes, he was available for the first time, so they wanted to get him out there to, kind of get the rust off and see what he can offer their team. but will he actually be in the rotation? That's up for debate here. I think it's confirmed that they have a 9-man rotation that's set, again with the 9 guys that I mentioned. Whether they run a 10-man rotation or not is kind of yet to be seen, but if they do in fact run one, I think that 10th player will be Maxi Kleber, as hinted by JJ Redick last night. Therefore, being above Dalton Knecht, even being above guys like Bronny James, Nick Smith, so on and so forth, Maxi Kleber is the likely 10th man in the rotation, and Dalton Knecht is the 11th man. Again, that may or may not change over time or simply depending on their matchup, but if what Redick showed last night is any indication, that will be their temporary starting lineup and their 9 or 10 man rotation entering the regular season. So that's something that we definitely did learn from preseason. Though apart from that, and apart from what's a little bit less obvious, I think something that will be changing is the way that they started last season compared to the way that they started this season. Not only from a player personnel standpoint, obviously Anthony Davis is gone and Luka Doncic is now here, but from the way they actually play on the court and the schemes they incorporate with their offense and defense on the court too. One of which being offensively, that being the amount of pick and roll they run and the amount of pick and roll they incorporate into their offense. That was something they did very little of early last season. Prior to the Luka Doncic trade and prior to the trade deadline, they had a very little pick and roll centric offense. Something that wasn't a good fit for D'Angelo Russell, something that at times wasn't even a good fit for LeBron. Their offense was more centered around Anthony Davis and running plays out of the horn set and simply out of the high post in general to incorporate more Anthony Davis and to let him operate out of their offense a bit more. But obviously now with Anthony Davis gone, even with LeBron no longer being their first option and the primary ball handler within their offense, they're going in the direction of what Luka Doncic likes, and that does happen to be a lot of pick and roll. A lot of high pick and roll to be specific. We've seen it throughout preseason, both with and without Luka Doncic on the court, really hinting that it's going to be a bigger part of their offense this season, something that Redick doesn't particularly love, as it can be a little bit harder to run offensive sets around that, especially if that's how they begin their offense with, but I think it's going to be a big part of their offense, and obviously with Luka Doncic preferring it, it's really not that shocking. Now unfortunately, the NBA does not track pick and roll throughout preseason, but they do throughout the regular season, so we can go back and look how effective and how frequently they ran a pick and roll play last season. Unfortunately, I can't split it up between pre and post trade deadline, but I guess you can kind of get a good picture for it and how kind of less frequently they ran it compared to how much more they likely will this season. But last season they did run a pick and roll roughly 15.9% of the time. That ranks them in the lower half of the league, and that's even with Luka Doncic on their team post trade deadline, so they definitely are not a heavy pick and roll centric team. Without Luka Doncic, they probably were in the bottom 5 or bottom 10 at the bare minimum. But when they did run a pick and roll, they were pretty darn effective. When talking about pick and roll percentile, they ranked in the top 10 with a 69 pick and roll percentile last season, averaging 15.8 points per game off pick and roll plays last season, scoring 0.91 points per possession off pick and roll plays to go with it. Then on top of that, getting to the free throw line very often out of the pick and roll, getting to the free throw line at nearly 13% off pick and roll plays. So yes, they may have not run them that often, but when they did, they were pretty damn effective. Which isn't that shocking given that they had LeBron for the entirety of last season, then eventually got Luka Doncic, even having D'Angelo Russell for part of the year, who was a pretty good pick and roll ball handler. So despite it not being a big part of their offense, it was a pretty effective part, and I think that will be guaranteed to go up again this season too. So I definitely think we learned that from preseason, that they will be running more pick and roll, that it will be a bigger part of their offense compared to last season, and that they'll be catering more to Luka Doncic than they were in their offense last year, and that he'll definitely be the most important part of their offense too, therefore adding more pick and roll to it. But then for one final big takeaway that I think we did learn from preseason, I would point to their rebounding ability, specifically their offensive rebounding ability. I mean, last season for example, they were a very poor offensive rebounding team, grabbing only 9.7 per game as an entire team, that ranking in the bottom 4 of the entire NBA, and I think they showed that they definitely have a higher ceiling in regard to offensive rebounding this season. I mean, between DeAndre Ayton and Jackson Hayes alone throughout preseason, only playing a combined 40 minutes per game, they grabbed nearly half of those offensive rebounds. Between the two of them grabbing 4.8 offensive rebounds per game, Ayton grabbing 2.4 and Hayes grabbing 2.4, Hayes playing only 16 minutes per game, Ayton playing only 24 minutes per game. So from the fact that those two can grab literally half of their offensive rebounds per game from last season, while playing a fraction of the minutes that they will play during the regular season in a game that actually counts, I think that's a pretty good indication of how much better they can be. Not only that, but I'd point to the rebounding in general too. Ayton was a rebounding monster throughout preseason, grabbing about 9 of them per game in only 24 minutes per game. Now translate that to per 36 minutes and he's grabbing nearly 13 rebounds per game, and with him playing likely between 28 to 32 minutes per game on average, I think he'll easily average double-double, averaging between 13 to maybe 16 points per game, then on top of that, grabbing between 11 to 13 rebounds per game to go with it, which will help them both offensively and defensively too. And then with Jackson Hayes putting on weight, reportedly adding between 10 to 15 pounds of muscle alone this summer, which I think was pretty apparent throughout preseason, I think that's a pretty good outlook for their rebounding ability. Between those two, then with a healthy Jared Vanderbilt who's a great rebounder himself, averaging roughly 11 rebounds per 36 minutes on his career, an additional 2 offensive rebounds per game to go with him, then with guys like Jake LaRavia who's a pretty good rebounder, even a guy like Hachimura who can be when committed, LeBron when he comes back, Luka Doncic obviously, even Austin Reeves a pretty good offensive rebounding guard. I think they definitely have a higher rebounding ceiling, a much higher offensive rebounding ceiling, and that will be an underrated aspect of their team and possibly their improvement this season too. So between the rebounding improvement, both offensively and defensively in my opinion, the pick and roll usage which is guaranteed to go up and will likely look better for their team as well, then their rotation being revealed, both their 9 and possibly 10-man rotation, and their starting lineup officially being unveiled to go with it, that's what we learned throughout preseason. Yes, you can point out other things which may or may not be as obvious or may or may not be as guaranteed to happen or improve for their team, but those are 4 or 5 things I think are guaranteed to show and that we can expect during the regular season, and throughout the early portion of it too. But with all of that being said, what do you guys think? What do you think we learned about them from preseason? Whether it be their rotation, whether it be individual performance, or anything from a team or individual standpoint, what stood out to you? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But I think that'll pretty much do it for this one, and if you enjoyed the video, then I would greatly appreciate it if you dropped a like, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and hit that notification bell to never miss out when I upload a video. But as always, thank you for watching and have a great day or night.